The Magic Thief, Chapter 7. When we finished lunch, I lugged up some water for washing and joined Bennett in the kitchen. He'd made tea and a basket of muffins for afters. I sniffed at the basket. "Smells good," I said. Bennett sat with his chair tipped back against the wall. He held knitting needles and had a pile of black wool next to his chair. The needles went tick, click, tick. He didn't answer. "Oh well. Do you want another?" I took one of the muffins and held the basket out to Bennett. He ignored it. Putting the basket down, I bit into my muffin and washed it down with a gulp of tea. Bennett watched me, but didn't speak. His knitting needles flashed, quick and silver in the black wool. I ate the last muffin and drank more tea. Then I picked up the crumbs from the bottom of the empty muffin basket and ate those. "What's it like then, you?" Bennett said, "being a cat?" I froze. Bennett had spoken to me. I looked at him, but he didn't seem angry, not a glare to be seen. "Well," I said slowly, "it's hard to explain." I wasn't sure I could even explain it to myself. "The tale is amazing." "Didn't it hurt?" Bennett asked. "The spell?" "No more than changing clothes hurt." "No." He gave me a glare, just a little one. "Reckon you're lying." I looked at him. So he'd been hurt whenever he'd tried the spell on him. "Could use a cat around here," Bennett said. "Storeroom's full of mice." He put the snarl of black wool and his knitting needles on the floor and got to his feet. "Master Nevery wants you." I jumped up. "I'm ready." I followed Bennett upstairs to the study. The remains of Nevery's muffins and tea lay on the table, and a merry fire burned in the hearth. Nevery himself sat at the table, his grimoire open before him. When I came in, he narrowed his eyes and frowned. Yes, I knew I had to get the information he needed, or I'd be in big trouble. Nevery got to his feet. "All right, boy," he said, and held up his locus magicalicus. I stepped forward. He checked the grimoire one last time, placed the stone against my forehead, and did the thing with the sparks and the ringing incantation. This time I listened more carefully so I could remember the words of the spell. That's what a wizard's apprentice is supposed to do, learn spells. But I didn't get all of it before everything went black and silent. When I woke up, Nevery was seated at the table, working. I stretched. Then I took a padding tour of the room. When I got around to Nevery, I sat in front of him, curling my tail over my paws. He ignored me. I sighed and lay down to wait. Finally, Nevery stood up. The magisters should be done with their lunch by now. He picked up his cane and put on his wide-brimmed hat. "And this time, boy, you'd better come away with more than a closed door." "Yes, all right." He put on his robe, I leapt up into his arms, and we left. As I had that morning, I padded down the stone passageways to the meeting room. This time the door was opened, and I went in. In the dim room, the magisters sat around a long table, a fat wizard at its head. None of them noticed me sneak in. I crouched at the base of the fat wizard's chair in shadows and pricked up my ears. They were talking about the weakening flow of magic to the system of weir lights that lit the eastern part of the city, the sunrise. The fat magister's name was Brumby. He had a round, rosy face and was dressed in bright yellow worm silk and velvet robes over a plain black suit and waistcoat. The sleeve of his robe had a patch with a fat black and yellow striped bee embroidered on it. With my paw, I batted his pocket. He kept a locust stone in there and a ring of keys. I couldn't get them out to look at them because cats might be good prowlers, but they're not very good at picking pockets. I was just settling into the shadows beside his chair for a good listen when Brumby's big, gentle hands reached down, picked me up by the middle, and set me on his lap. I struggled, but he held me tightly by the scruff, then gave me a scritch behind the ears. "Nice kitty," he murmured in a soft voice. He was all right then. I sat down, tail over paws, ready to pick up some information to bring back to Nevery. At last the magisters finished their discussion of the weirlights. "Very well, then," Brumby said. He reached into his other pocket and pulled out a delicious-smelling napkin. Then he unwrapped it, a sandwich left over from his lunch, and fed me a sliver of chicken. I ate it and licked my whiskers. I'm afraid that I must again bring up the problem of the decay of magic in Wilmette. Brumby looked down the table at the other wizards. "The Duchess expects us to act to deal with this situation, and we don't want things to spin out of our control." I agree that the situation is becoming alarming, said a lady wizard with gray hair piled in a messy bun atop her head, and that we need someone to focus his or her attention on dealing with this crisis. What about you, Brumby? Would you do it? The fat wizard shook his head. No, no, Periwinkle. I don't want to do it. What about you, Sandera? A keen-looking youngish woman at the other end of the table shook her head. Oh, indeed no, Brumby, not I. But we do, as you know, have another choice. She looked around the table. Not Pedavox, gray-haired Periwinkle said. Brumby shook his head. Certainly not. I purposely did not invite him today so we could consider the matter without him. Pedavox would not be suitable. Power-hungry, Sandera agreed. Therefore he is a danger, don't you know? And he spends too much of his time traveling to the desert city. But there is still one more to consider. A tall, sharp wizard banged his bony fist and glared down the table at Brumby. We cannot name Nevery. Brumby raised his eyebrows. I didn't mention Nevery. Well, you were thinking of him, the sharp wizard said. I could tell. Now, we all know he's managed to get the Order of Exile repealed and has returned to Wilmette, and we all know why. The gray-haired wizard nodded her head. True enough, Nevery has returned, but I don't see that asking him to lead us magisters through this crisis would be such a bad thing. Better than Pedavox, certainly. The sharp wizard groaned. Nevery is dangerous. He pays absolutely no attention to the laws governing the use of magic in the city. He will lead us into trouble. He's already dealing with the Underlord, I hear. The fat wizard gave me a reassuring stroke. Not to worry. I think everyone realizes that in such times as these, we need a wizard like Nevery. He is the only one who can balance the Underlord and the Duchess. And despite his hastiness, he's the finest wizard this city has ever seen. I agree, Nevery would be best, said Periwinkle. I concur, added the keen lady, Sandera. Well, Trammell? Brumby asked. Oh, all right, the sharp wizard answered. But don't think I'm going on my knees to Nevery's ghastly old mansion to beg him to lead us. That's all right, Trammell, Brumby said. His fingers tapped me twice on the head. Pay attention, he seemed to be saying. I sat up. I have a feeling that Nevery will come to us. He nodded. He will meet with us soon. And I think that concludes the meeting. The other wizards began to rise, talking, shuffling papers. Right, I had what I needed. I got ready to spring from Brumby's lap, to race to tell Nevery the news. The wizard's big hand stopped me. Off you go now, kitty. The man smiled and gave me another rub under the chin. In spite of myself, I purred. Run back to your master as fast as you can. I leapt from the wizard's lap and tore out of the magister's meeting chamber.